Sue Roy. Hello, welcome to my podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Jack, and thanks for having me on as a guest. I'm super excited.
Yeah, for the guests listening, Sue and I have been sending 20 to 30-minute voice notes to each other like once a week for the past few months. And they've been every time I'm like, this could be a podcast. We go so deep. So I wanted to share this with the world and actually sync up. So this is going to be fun.
Yeah. Those little voice notes do feel like little mini podcasts.
Definitely. Right before we hopped on, you were talking about you just want to play with ideas and see where it flows. So
hmm
when I read your writing on Twitter, there's like a playfulness to it. It feels like you're playing with ideas. Is that your mindset when you're writing?
I think it's my mindset for everything right now. It's I think I've tried the whole try to control everything and try to get everything to fit this mold sort of mindset. And there's just too much uncertainty. There's too much that I can't. I mean, it's just a lot of effort for very little ROI. And so I feel like the mindset I've been approaching is let's just play with what's present. I mean, it's not like I'm running away from what's present or just treating it all trivially, but it's just about letting go and playing with it. So yeah, writing is also an extension of that.
Mm. How has that shifted for you in the past few months? This perspective of maybe more open, more trusting, not trying to control everything, because maybe we can get into it. We won't say specifics, but
hmm
you do work, like from my understanding, a pretty um, official tech job. And that, to me, that world is like the world of control, the world of
hmm
order. So how do you live in that world and still play?
Honestly, I feel like tech is play. The way that we approach product development, it is more like, okay, so in this world of uncertainty, let's figure out how we can try these solutions, because when you're building something, you almost are certain that the first couple of tries are not quite going to hit it unless you're lucky. So it is just about putting something out there, seeing how it goes, getting feedback and iterating. And if you have this mindset of I need everything to go precisely how I want it to be, you're going to miss feedback, you're going to miss creativity that is part of the playful process. So I feel like it isn't very much different from what I do, because it is just about putting things out there and seeing what comes back. And if anything, I think the world of tech has helped me experiment more in my life. I think I wasn't doing it as much personally because I felt like even my first attempts needed to be correct. But now it's like, okay, you have an idea, let's test it out. Let's get an MVP out tomorrow. I mean, that's with AI, but back in the day, maybe MVP out in 2 weeks. And you still had to just try something and fail and be okay with failing and treat that as data. So it doesn't feel very different, to be honest.
Mm. And I know you're playing around with ideas in your head all the time. We talk about this all the time in our voice notes. Like you talk about something called active imagination.
Yeah.
So can you explain to myself and the listener what is active imagination and how do you do it?
Okay, yeah. So firstly, I should say that I'm not a Jungian expert. This was taught to me at this conference on psychedelics. And okay, let me explain what it is before explaining my experience with it. So it's a way for the conscious mind to interact with the subconscious mind or the unconscious mind, um, with what Carl Jung calls a waking dream. So what that means is basically you would start with a symbol or a scene from, let's say, a dream, and you would follow that through. You would, let's say, you dreamt of a star. I don't know why, but let's just take that example. Then you would try to see, okay, how does this look? What if I approach this star and then the star morphs into something else? And you close your eyes, drop into that open receptive state, and follow the symbols and follow the subconscious as it evolves. And from there, you might find that figures appear, or parts of you start to have conversations. And it sounds very psychedelic. It sounds like you need to be in this altered state of mind to do this. But really, it's just so easy. You just close your eyes and you'll be surprised at how easy it is to have these kinds of dialogues once you get the hang of it. And so basically, it's just a way to understand what's beneath the surface and how do we interact with that without it being in some altered state where we don't have control. The beauty of this practice is that you can do this completely sober at any point in time and learn so much about what's happening in your subconscious.
Do you have to have your third eye open in order to do this practice of active imagination?
Um, I don't think so. I don't think so. And the reason is I've worked with a lot of people. I haven't tried active imagination with them specifically, but I have tried IFS, which is internal family systems, with them. And that I feel is a more structured form of active imagination because you're dialoguing with parts in your mind. You're trying to see what form do they take, do they bring back any memories, and none of them have ever had a problem with being able to visualize it. And I'm guessing a lot of those people don't necessarily um, have their third eyes open. I don't even personally know what it feels like for me to have it open, but I do know that it's very accessible to everyone, even if the visual component is, let's say, toned down. Some people have a problem visualizing things. The dialogue aspect, the ability to feel into what something means, like the cognizance part of it, those are just as valid a part of the active imagination process. So I don't think you need to have any kind of, and I say this because I don't want anyone to feel like they need to have reached a specific state in their spiritual journey to be able to do it. I think this is just as accessible as you being able to have a thought, your internal dialogue, but you're just paying attention to it. So I don't think so.
Mm. And so when you're paying attention to it, you're kind of following a thread of image after image after image. And I know some people don't think in images. They think in words. They think in concepts. They think in symbols.
Yeah.
So, it's funny. I do this all the time, but not with my eyes closed and in my head sometimes, but I tend to access the subconscious via signs and symbols in my external environment and working with tools. And my favorite tools are different tarot decks because that for me helps me bring up to the surface what is lying beneath. So, I mean, all these things are so fascinating and they've really transformed my life. And learning to live from your subconscious, it's you change your whole reality. I mean, I probably think of this quote by Jung every day. He says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you'll call it fate. I've probably used that like every day in some context for the last few weeks at least. And I mean, most people just have no idea that your subconscious is actually available to you to access. But like the tools to get there, I mean, if I go to teach this, it's okay, what are the birds in the external environment telling you? Or what are these tarot cards telling you? That puts a lot of people off. It's really esoteric. But I think active imagination or having a dialogue in your head, that is much more grounded, which I think is really powerful.
Yeah, I agree. But interestingly enough, the concept of synchronicities was also a Jungian concept. So I think that anyone who's drawn to it might be open to the fact that, one way to look at the birds and the signs and symbols around you is that the external mirrors the internal. But the other way, if you want to look at it from a more psychologically grounded perspective, is that there's something that in your brain and something in your subconscious that's prompting you to even notice these patterns in the first place. And so you're making meaning out of what you see. It's not just happening. And yeah, I mean, like, I know from our voice notes you say that I know when there's an owl, or I know when there's this bird, that this is what it means. But your brain is kind of creating that meaning out of it. And so that's also valuable data. I don't think of it as just like, a flippant or trivial thing. So I mean, I think Jung, I don't know if he'd agree, but synchronicities and these concepts very much align with his work.
What drew you to his work in the first place? Do you remember?
Oh, wow. I think I just like the idea of exploring the subconscious. I used to spend a lot of, well, I was an only child growing up, so I spent a lot of time in my head analyzing and dreaming, and especially though I grew up in the days without smartphones, so not much else to do. I don't know when I first came across him, But I know that the time that active imagination was probably one of the first triggers for me to get into his work. Yeah, I don't know what else. I don't know what else drew me to him. Just feel like I just like the essence is I like to feel and feel something to be true myself with before I just believe something. And I think that was his approach as well. Like in the Red Book, which I know you have got, he kind of documents his explorations into his subconscious, and so much of his writing is from his own felt experiences, and that's kind of like how that's kind of what I like to do as well. Not just believe something for the sake of it, but to feel it, to know it to be true to the extent that I can, and then believe it. And I think there's a bit of resonance there.
Tell me more about the Red Book. So I have it. It looks
Yeah.
super cool on my bookshelf.
Yeah.
I've probably read 5 or 10 pages.
Yeah.
And what I've read is very interesting. It's very deep.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. Have you read it? Like, what should we know about it? Because it's a very legendary book.
Yeah.
And I think with a lot of these books, like the Red Book, Man and His Symbols, Reality Transurfing, you know,
Yeah.
we all have the books, but how many people have actually read them? So yeah, tell me about it.
The Red Book is a hard one to read, I'm not going to lie, because it doesn't read like a book. It is basically the adventures and journeys that Carl Jung took through his active imagination. So he's documented all of that. And in this process, he's kind of come across several entities in his mind, and he checks in with them and has dialogues with them. And then that's what the book is all about. So as you can imagine, it's not structured. It's not exactly light reading, but it is, and it's kind of a mind fuck. So I haven't read it cover to cover, but I will go there. It has a capacity to be a little bit ungrounding just because of how wild it can be. But I do think that for anyone who feels like their imagination or creativity is limited, to just read a little bit of it to see what it can feel like. And when they have their own active imagination sessions, they won't feel judgmental towards the bizarreness that can come up in these sessions, and they'll feel like, okay, well, Carl Jung was having these crazy adventures and mine are normal. So
Yeah, it reads like a psychedelic trip for sure.
Yeah.
And honestly, like when I watch my own mind, it's like it's like a psychedelic trip. And I think if you get still and quiet and you watch, it can go there. Like once you sort through all the day-to-day bullshit that's in your mind, like, oh, I got to reply to that email, I got to do this, blah, blah, blah. Once you get past there, then you access what seems like this subconscious, and it's a complete trip. I wanted to ask a question on how he described entities in the book, if you know. So they were in his own mind. Does he describe them as being actual external beings, or are they figments of his subconscious and his imagination?
So I think the way that he describes it is it's in his imagination, but I haven't read the book cover to cover, so I might be wrong about that. But I think that he thinks of them as manifestations in his subconscious, which doesn't have to mean that they're not also external. I mean, it does talk about the collective unconscious, but that's how I think I read it as.
That's much more empowering for me to hear, and I
Okay.
think everybody to hear, because, you know, I hadn't even become aware of this term of entities until maybe 5 or 6 months ago. And at first it really scared me. Like I thought it was all external, like literally in the night, like things were coming into my consciousness that I couldn't control. And only recently I've shifted to seeing them as figments of my imagination and not real, right? Because the mind only believes what the subconscious believes is real. That's all that's real. Dumbledore said it, right? You said that quote to me. He's like, just because it's in your mind doesn't mean it's not real. So our mind creates our reality. So then they are, quote unquote, real to the person that believes they're real.
Yeah.
But since seeing them as objects of my imagination and identifying that, I'll give you a more specific example. like 3-4 months ago, when I would sit in meditation, I would see like darker entities. I would see snake entities. I would see dragons. And I thought that was just something external. And so I would do the work to clear it or whatever. But recently, when I see it, I'm just like, oh, that's just an illusion. Boom. It's not real. Boom. Come back to the highest frequency. That seems like all this game is for me recently, is how much can I stay in my highest frequency?
Mm-hmm.
And this call is already kind of shifting me. Before the call, I was operating in a little bit of a lower frequency. I think the last 36 hours,
Mm-hmm.
which we can maybe get into, because I would love to talk about this with you, because you're in a tech job, right? I notice I do try to stay aware, present, and in the highest frequency. I notice when I'm around lower frequency, lower vibrational situations, be it school or like sometimes football or sometimes going home for
Mm-hmm.
holidays, my vibration lowers. And so if I get back into a good conversation, I get back into my center, I do some things that feel good, I'll get back into it pretty quickly. But how do you navigate that? Because you're clearly operating from a pretty high frequency, from what I know about you. So how do you navigate it in the normal day-to-day tech world?
I think I don't know if I do. I do have times when I'm not feeling my best, and I think the most probably the most powerful shift is that I recognize that to be okay. That the downs are just as much a part of the experience as the ups. And if anything, there's signals. There's signals trying to tell me that something is either, off course or that something needs my attention. And sometimes those signals are correct, that, something does need my attention. And sometimes those signals are coming from parts of me that have a different story about who I am, perhaps that I'm less capable or, younger than who I am, than what I am. And so I've recognized that instead of labeling things on a hierarchical scale of lower and higher, which I get, I think that's also, it's good to have that scale as well, to check in, like, where are you relative to where you want to be? But I also don't think the lower is inherently bad. Like anger can tell you where your boundaries are, and it's telling you something good about what you need to do. Sadness is very normal, and if anything, it's the resistance to those kinds of emotional states that causes that feeling of, I shouldn't be feeling this way. I think that's where the suffering, that's where I've experienced the suffering, is when I tell myself that this isn't normal. I should be feeling incredible all the time. Yeah, sometimes I'm going to get irritated at work. I mean, sometimes Cursor is going to get something wrong and I'm going to be like, what are you doing? And that's just okay. Like, frustration is another way to indicate, like, I'm excited about what I'm building and I'm impatient. And oh, okay, fine. That's what you're telling me, frustration. Perhaps I should just take a breath and remind myself about what this project means to me, but also about what my life is. And this is a little blip in that. And I'm just happy to enjoy the experience, all of it, I guess.
That's
Does that make
amazing.
sense?
That's a great perspective. Yeah. And I think sometimes when we get onto the spiritual path or get onto the path of living in love or living in the highest frequency possible, we think it means we can't experience quote unquote negative emotions. And this flipped for me recently. I was watching this movie in theaters called The Last Supper, and it's about Jesus, and it's really good. I'd recommend go seeing it. And there's a scene where he flips over the tables in the temple, and like he fully was in anger in that moment, but he was still channeling the divine mission through him. And I was like, that's so interesting, right? He could be fully with anger if that was what nature, God intended in that moment. So that's a very refreshing perspective, being fully with whatever. And I just see, these are the little synchronicities that happen. It's so interesting. I was walking in my living room just now, and I accidentally kicked the book on the floor, the Bhagavad Gita, and it's bringing a quote from it to my mind. And it's like, if you can be alike in pleasure or suffering, or free from the cycle of pleasure and suffering, and knowing your true nature, the true self never dies. I'm definitely butchering that. That's like maybe a few of them pieced together. But all these traditions talk about if you can be outside of that emotion, like, yeah, you're experiencing it fully in the moment, but you are the consciousness aware of it behind you, then that's completely, it's just what's arising.
Yeah.
That's so refreshing. So how do we stay in that seat of awareness, that conscious observer throughout our lives?
Well, that is the question, isn't it?
It's what was present, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I've never thought of that question, but I think for me, it was just a question of recognizing that experientially. And I remember there was this meditation um, that I did after this breath work. Um, Actually, no, that's going into something else. But to answer your question, I think you have to recognize it for yourself to know that just in the same way that you can do this exercise where you listen to the sounds around you and listen to the thoughts and realize that the thoughts are similar to sounds, that they're just appearances, and you can't really predict the next thought. You can't really control it or try to be anything than it is. It just appears. And so then who's the one that's watching it? And then you kind of notice that that persists through all of these states of consciousness. It's more of, the way I'm explaining it feels intellectual, but there is something like there's a way to experience and feel it. And I think that's something that everyone has to do on their own to believe it, because otherwise it just doesn't make any sense. And kind of once you believe it, I think it's hard to shake. Even in the most intense moments, you can forget, but as the emotion eventually releases its grip on you, as you stay with the emotion, even in that moment, you can recognize that, oh, there is a separation between me and the anger, and right now I'm blended with it. But you can check in about how you feel towards it, and I don't know. It's hard to say because you have to feel it first, and then it just becomes something you can't unsee. It's something you can't unfeel, and over time you just remember to do that. I guess you could also try to have a practice where when you feel very emotionally charged, to remind yourself in that moment to create that separation. And in my mind, one of the things that I like to do is to see it as a character in front of me, and then immediately there's a separation. So let's say there's fear, and I'm feeling very, wrapped up in the fear. I'm feeling my heart beating. I'm feeling cold and clammy. And in that moment, I say, okay, well, fear, I want to talk to you or be curious about you. And I visualize it as part of me that's right in front of me. And in that moment, I'm able to get a little bit of breathing room and recognize myself as what is watching the fear rather than become it. But I don't know, that's how I do it.
Yeah. Can you tell us about that tangent that you were almost about to go on? The meditation breathwork one? Because I feel your tangents usually contain a lot of profound wisdom.
Well, I mean, sure, I could go there, but I don't know if it'll make any. It's like an active imagination. I don't know if these are symbolic to me or if it'll make sense to anyone, but I can share it. So it was after this holotropic breathing that I had done, and I was slightly in an altered state of consciousness and watching the sun stream in, and the sun in that moment spoke to me. I know this sounds crazy, but it did. And it's like, oh, hey, we're the same. And what are you doing? You wanted this experience of being human. Do you remember that? We wanted you to feel this. So you should experience all of it. You have this unique opportunity to know what it feels like to be human, to have senses, to experience things. Like, it was talking to me like it was me. And
It is you
it,
in some way,
it,
right?
it felt like that. It really felt so true. The wind that was blowing outside and rustling my curtains, it felt like I could almost feel it in my body as it moved. And so in that moment, I realized, well, in that altered state of consciousness, it was like, yeah, well, I'm just consciousness experiencing itself through this human lens. And so when you look at it that way, everything becomes all of the good, the bad. It's like watching a movie. I mean, we watch sad movies, we watch horror movies, right? But they're pleasurable because we know we're not in it. And that's how it felt like in that moment, because I was going through something difficult at that time, and but I got out of it just feeling so grateful for just the ability to experience. So that was a tangent. I don't know if it makes sense to anyone else.
No,
But
I'm really happy that I asked and
yeah.
that you shared that, because some of the most wild esoteric things contain the deepest profound truths. And like you said, it felt like the sun was me in
Mhm.
some way, right? It's just pure energy, it's pure consciousness, and so it is. And what freedom did that unlock on
Oh,
the other side?
the freedom to just soak it all in, the freedom to let go, the freedom to really cherish this opportunity, because it just allowed me to ground myself so much more and so much deeper into the experience of life. There was less avoidance because there was almost a little bit of sadness at the thought of the times that I'd avoided before, because I remembered what the sun told me, like, you wanted this, you wanted this experience. And so to miss even a moment of it would be tragic. And so even the bad parts, because that's what makes it, that's why you chose this. And so it unlocked an expectation of everything going a particular way, because it just wouldn't be fun if it did. And so in order to maximize this experience, I just have to play along, play the game, and trust that whatever set this all up knew what it was doing.
Mhm. We would think so. We would hope so.
Yeah.
That's faith. That's faith. Tell me about tell me about your experience in this moment right now.
Hmm.
What's arising?
Gratitude, freedom, just a sense of ease. And I think I'm just relishing, I think savoring is the feeling, relishing this experience, and feeling grateful for this reminder of this experience. It feels so visceral to me about the sun speaking to me. So yeah, it's just a very, just feeling like I'm really just savoring the moment.
Incredible.
How about
Yeah.
you? What's arising for you?
Yeah, it's been like kind of a whirlwind of a day, really. There's part of me that's like, I wish I was feeling a little bit more high frequency, high presence, but I'm dipping in and out. I asked you the question earlier about how do you stay super high frequency in the normal life. And yeah, I mean, I would love to spend my whole day today building my own stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I had to spend the whole day doing homework, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh fuck, like I like there's like a subtle resistance to it the whole time,
Yeah.
but I see it now, and even talking about it now, I'm resisting what is. Okay, this is what's present. Can I somehow make it enjoyable, make it light? And I do. I play music and stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. That's been the energy today, and it has me excited for the future of when am I going to be fully doing my own stuff again? But it's my work, it's my lessons right now, it's my karma I'm going through. So time for me to learn the lessons. And
Yeah.
I think I am.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful perspective. And yeah, I don't know if there's any time in our lives when we'll have, like, can you imagine what complete and 100% freedom would feel like?
Yes. I've
Yeah.
felt it before for sure.
Okay. For an
Yeah.
extended period of time? Like, what does it feel like to have no constraints whatsoever?
There's just an ease and lightness in the body.
Mm-hmm.
There's an ease and lightness in the mind. There is just presence with what is. And I can give more concrete examples. Like a few times where I tapped into that frequency. I feel like I tap into it almost every day when I'm working and building my own projects. It's so fun. It feels like
Yeah.
I'm playing a video game. Now, other examples have been, there was a time in Thailand where I basically stopped working for like a month, and I was finally allowing myself to just settle down for the first time in my life. And I remember I was sitting in a hammock and just like looking out at the sun, and just this peace overtook me. I was like, wow,
Mm.
I could just stay here forever. Everything is perfect as is. There's also been times, especially that Thailand trip, that really opened me in a big way. to these different aspects or frequencies that I didn't know existed. Like there would be times where I'd be dancing at a rave by myself at 2 a.m. I knew nobody there. And I could be whoever the fuck I wanted to be. That's the feeling. You can be wholly embodied in what you're doing in each moment with no self conflict. That's what I think freedom is. That's what I think enlightenment is, really.
Yeah, I love that.
What is it like for you?
I think you've hit on something that resonated a lot, and you said when there's no internal conflict, and I think that's probably pretty close to for me as well. So, um, in the moment, yeah, I've experienced that sense of dissolution of the self almost, but to have freedom over an extended period of time, I would probably not be able to never encounter a constraint. So I don't know if it's possible to have absolute freedom. So freedom in that context for me is inner harmony, where all parts of me are on the same page and I'm listening to them and I'm hearing them, and um yeah, there's less internal fighting and more about that internal harmony. So that it would be very similar to yours.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. It's like there's no fighting between the separate self and the capital S self,
Yeah.
is one way to put it. There's just pure harmony flow with what is arising in each moment.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the highest frequency state. I do think it's possible for all of us, by the way.
Yeah.
I really do. This is the planetary shift that's happening.
Yeah.
This is where we're all going.
Yeah.
We're just learning how to get there. And this
Yeah.
conversation is even helping us learn how to get there in some ways.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, what was so interesting the first time we ever talked is I don't usually meet somebody on a connection call and then we start talking about like non-duality. And like that was one of the first times I really talked about that. So okay, maybe we talk about that topic of non-duality. Because that state is associated with the state of enlightenment. If you look at the Hawkins scale, it's peace. It's oneness with the external environment. It's oneness with God. So, I mean, when did your interests even start on this? And what has your path been like since you first found out about these higher states of consciousness, you could say?
The first time, I don't remember the first time, but I know that as a kid, there was this place that we used to go to. It was called the School of Ancient Wisdom, and it had just such an incredible resonance about it. And I remember just going to that place and feeling at absolute ease and peace, similar to how you were talking about your Thailand experience. And there was something, and I used to kind of chase that feeling. And so pretty sure, I don't remember what happened between there and when I first came across non-dual philosophy, but I think I used to always wonder, like, I think we've talked about this in our voice notes as well, like, where do I end and where do you begin, sort of thing. This idea that we're constantly exchanging air with the space around us. This idea that, I remember when this was happening. Once I was talking to my parents and we were saying that, oh, in this moment, even though we are oceans apart, the things that you're saying are physiologically molding themselves into my mind, because every time you say something, the neurons fire in my mind and they're changing it, and they're literally molding themselves into me. So our thoughts are molding each other. We are exchanging air with the universe. There's no real boundary between ourself and the rest. So it's just a psychological concept, pretty much, right? The ego. And even that can step away in these moments. So, I mean, to answer your question, I don't remember the first time, but I think I formally came across it when I was interested in psychedelics and came across the idea of ego death. But then I then fell into philosophies like this is Indian philosophy called Advaita Vedanta. There's Tantra. There's so many of these different philosophies that speak about it more as a state of a constant state of being rather than something you drop into with a psychedelic. And I think what really cemented it was my practice with IFS, like internal family systems. There's, you mentioned the capital S self. When I'm kind of in that state of capital S self, it feels like the boundaries between me and the rest of the world have dissolved. And I would even take it a step further. It's not just about the physical boundaries or the psychological boundaries. Even my judgments of what's good, what's wrong, what's, you know, those kinds of judgments fall away as well. So it's non-dual even in that sense, that there not being such a thing as this is divine and that is demonic or something like that. Even those kinds of boundaries fall away. Because like you were alluding to before, it's about being in that state of love. And even when there is negativity, being in the state of love is accepting that, is recognizing that even when there is something negative, it's coming from a place of loving you. Like if there is a fear in you that's trying to protect you from something, it's still coming from a place of love. Anyway, I am going to resist going into another random tangent, but yeah, that's when it started experiential. And then I think I sought philosophies and experiences that helped me experience more of it.
Mm. Interesting. And in your personal experiences of this state,
Yeah.
because there's one thing to read about it and then there's another to experience it. And I know you mentioned you did some psychedelics, so you probably have. What was it like? Like, was it jarring to step outside of the ego? Because it was for me. That's why I want to ask.
No, because I think it was when my ego was trying to hold on. That was the time that it was most jarring. But when it was just out, it felt like I was free. So it was the takeoff that felt more like there was a struggle between the ego trying to hold on and then releasing. But yeah, once the veil had lifted, it was easy. Well, not easy because the ego was still present at the boundaries, but
and was this during like a psychedelic trip?
The ego, yeah, and breath work as well.
Okay. I'm curious about this because the first time that it really happened to me, that okay, like I see through the illusion of the separate self, I'm one with everything. The ego is not the true me. There was like a grieving process after that, I would say, for about like a week, because it's like everything I had known up to that point was not true. And yeah, I've read about these things, but experiencing it for real,
it
was quite jarring. But I think the more you sit with it, the more freeing it is. But yeah, I wonder, was there any like grieving part after that? Like, oh wow, I just saw through the illusion of my separate self.
I don't think there was grieving. There was a great deal of disorientation, and periods of derealization where you kind of look around and you question reality, and that's uncomfortable and it's ungrounding. And I experienced some of that. Grieving, not so much, because I never felt that this was not true. It comes back to that Dumbledore quote, like, what is that? Why should it mean that it isn't real? Like all of this is real, and there's it's like a fractal of truths, a little truth and a bigger truth and a bigger truth, but that doesn't make the little truth any less true. Or I don't know. Why do you feel like this isn't true?
The separate self?
Oh, that's what you meant by true. So you're grieving because you felt like the separate self was not true? Or
To
that
some
because you
extent.
didn't exist?
Yes. I think it evolves in tiers. So at first it's
Yeah.
like all that exists is my separate self.
Yeah.
Then it's like, oh my gosh, I step into I don't know, God consciousness, all knowing consciousness.
Yeah.
And from that state, it feels like, oh, that part of me, Jack, was all an illusion because there's just pure
Oh yeah.
consciousness. But since now I'm coming to the place where, like, no, it's an integration process of, can you stay in that seat of consciousness, knowing that your personal individual self is the character playing out the divine orchestrated play.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that the character is going to be forgotten,
Yeah.
because I believe that God wants us to all live beautiful lives that our personal selves love. That has become much more freeing for me. So it's the same thing, it's these things. You gain new awareness of non-dual consciousness. You gain new awareness that something called an entity exists. At first, it's almost disempowering when you don't understand enough. But once you begin to understand more, you connect back and you're like, no, it's always, there's some middle way. It's not to the extreme. It's not they don't exist or they're completely real. It's like, oh no, my subconscious mind creates my subjective reality. That's the more real truth.
Right. Right. Yeah, now that you said it, in that moment when you said it, I felt a bit of grief. I don't think I'd felt it before, but I felt a little grief for the part of me that is no longer going to exist at some point in time, and a little grief for my identity, and not just mine, everybody that I've lost, I suppose. I mean, if we're all just going to merge into consciousness, I'll never get to see them again in a way. And so yeah, there's a little bit of grief of that. And I know that this grief is an illusion, because once I'm there isn't going to be a me in the way that I see it now. So I won't be there to experience the grief. It's like anticipatory grief, that I know that I won't be there, but when I'm there, I won't feel it because I won't be me. So it's a weird.
Mm. Yeah, I guess how can we really know
Yeah.
until that point happens?
Yeah.
I read about this stuff all the time, but you can only know it from experience.
Yeah.
It feels like a fun video game that we're all playing out.
It does.
And so why not make the video game of life the greatest it could be?
Yeah. 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 Why not? Buckle in and enjoy the ride. That's what play is. It kind of comes back full circle to the first thing we talked about. Part of the video game, part of what makes it exciting is just how uncertain and mysterious it all is.
What feels like the most play for you?
Mm. What feels like the most play? Kind of all of it. I don't know if I can leave anything out. I mean, there are things that I do that feel more playful than other things. I mean, obviously, doing my taxes is not play, but I mean, part of play in the grander scheme of things. But right now, connecting with people, whether it's like this, just chats, or especially when ideas like this just evolve and it feels like you're plugged into your imagination, your creativity. So this feels like play. Coaching conversations or building. I love to build. I love to create and see how ideas can manifest into things. And that feels like play.
What are you creating and building right now?
Strangely enough, I want to build a game. We're talking about video games, so it's funny. I want to build a game in the self-reflection and wellness space. It's proving to be a little trickier than I initially expected, but I wanted to build some way for people to visualize and parts of themselves, not only because it helps them understand their unconscious or the subconscious parts, but like we were talking about, it creates that separation between them as a witness and a part of themselves that's activated, and they learn how to talk to themselves in a much more kind way, which I find that doesn't happen a lot, and myself included, we tend to be pretty mean to ourselves. And so I want to change that in some way.
Tell us more about the video game. Like, what's your vision?
Still playing with it, but I want people to go on quests into their subconscious mind and be guided by this real physical game, and not physical, but virtual, digital game. so that they can identify, okay, these are the parts that showed up, as I felt into certain emotional states. They can add it to the game, and then they can check in with those parts over time, kind of like what Carl Jung did with the Red Book, where he noticed that he was bumping into these entities over and over again, and that meant something to him in his subconscious, and then he was able to go back to them and have these dialogues. And I think this makes it sound very esoteric, but we all have this idea of the inner critic or inner child, and all of these other personas, sub personalities that exist within us. And so, yeah, I want people to be able to externalize that, because then it becomes easier to understand the dynamics of what's going on, that internal harmony, like achieve that internal harmony that we were talking about. And also, I'm hoping that it will be fun above all, because you're not going to come back to it if it feels psychologically taxing or feels clinical. But if you get rewards, or like complete certain stages in your journey, or get points for talking to yourself nicely, it could be something that incentivizes you to do it more. And then hopefully, the goal is that this sticks as a habit and changes your internal dialogue.
I have a lot of little ideas on that if we're just going to play around.
Yeah.
Like what's coming through for me, like there's a vision in my mind of like a video game like Assassin's Creed or something, where you have a map and you're going on different quests. Okay. What if a quest your character was going on, and maybe this could be in like VR, you're going back to your 6-year-old self when this thing happened and learning to release it. And then you measure your points by where you calibrating on the map of consciousness. And now how would they be able to do that? I don't know. But I mean, this seems like a fun idea. And I think with AI, like this keeps processing for you over a few years, you could probably just have the idea and it becomes reality within a day.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. We've been talking about building, and like the limits to what we can build are decreasing more and more, to the point where there's going to be absolutely no limit, just our imagination.
Yeah.
Which I think is the singularity.
Yeah.
Which like I think we're almost there, or maybe we're in it. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's insane. And I feel like somebody asked me this question of what do you think it's going to look like in 10 years? And I'm like, how the human brain doesn't comprehend exponentials very well. Like, you give somebody a penny that is going to double over the course of a month versus $1 million. People are not going to take the penny, but the penny actually becomes like 5 million or something at the end of the month. Our brains just don't get it. And I feel like that's what's going to happen with AI as well. Like 10 years, I can't even picture what that's going to be like. It's going to be insane. And I'm just, what a time to be alive.
Yes, everything seems to be accelerating. I put this out today, like in the quantum world, nothing happens and then everything happens. It's like a quantum leap into a new dimension.
Yeah.
It's not going to just happen slowly.
Yeah.
It's going to happen overnight. And I think the singularity happens overnight. The collective awakening happens overnight. These things are all going to be, boom, instantaneous paradigm shifts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've been feeling that acceleration, and it feels like it's also written in the stars. Like Neptune just moved into Aries for the next, I don't know, like 15 years for the first time in a while. Aries, Neptune's all very spiritual, mystical. Aries is bold energy. And Mars just shifted into Leo. I was posting about that like a few days ago. So it just feels like this time of acceleration. Like, what are you noticing in your subjective reality? Are you perceiving acceleration in your own life?
Yes. A lot is changing all at the same time. And in every single dimension, I could go on about that, but kind of off topic. But yeah, I do feel it, and I do feel it in my mind as well. I guess it's prompted by AI, but I just know that the way that our jobs are, the way they are now, they're not going to be like that anytime for much longer. And so I was thinking about this the other day. Our paradigms of how we thought about things now has completely changed. Like, we have to start thinking at the speed of AI. Like, we used to be able to have research cycles that spanned a week or two, and then get feedback from people, and this and that. But now everything can be done instantaneously, but in our minds there's still a little bit of a lag of how fast can I do this, like, how fast can I make this thing happen. That feeling of agency needs to be recalibrated in accordance to how fast things can actually be done. The technical limitation is the this concept in chemistry, like the limiting reagent, the limiting factor, that has shrunk now, and now our thinking has to match that. So to answer your question, yeah, everything feels like it's accelerating. It feels a little bit, as I'm thinking about it now, my body is kind of wilting and I'm
Wilting?
feeling a little breathless. Like
Oh
I can
wow.
feel that. I hadn't noticed how it feels like I'm a constantly revved up engine all the time because of how fast everything's moving.
Yeah, and imagine somebody who's not even so conscious. Like the world is so rapid.
Yeah.
And I mean, we have to take back control of that, but also in some ways we have to stay up to speed with it.
Yeah.
So, how does one match their thinking to the speed of AI?
Mm.
I've never heard of this before.
I think I think there's two things here. I think one, as I was speaking, I noticed this need for me to ground myself in a more permanent, eternal, like I'm just watching all of this. I don't need to keep up with everything. It's not survival. Like I noticed that part of me as we were talking, and as we were thinking about thinking at the speed of AI, this FOMO part that's like, we've got to keep up. It's survival's at stake, but
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
FOMO. It's like I want to see it all. I want to play with it all.
Yeah. And I need to build something while it's happening. And
Yeah, I don't want to
it's
miss out.
exciting. Yeah, I get it. Me too.
Yeah, so on one side, you kind of want to jump on it and take it by the horns. But on the other side, it's about sinking in and really savoring the other parts of it. Like I have noticed this in myself where things that are the things that give you the most joy, the relationships, the solo walks with nothing but your thoughts, and the technology free walks, these moments are, it's easy to deprioritize it because you feel like the world is in this race where everyone's sprinting ahead. And if you
Hmm.
you build this product and tomorrow, oh, ChatGPT has completely crushed it, everything, you know what I mean? Like there's this constant rush because everything's changing. I know this doesn't answer your question, but I was just reminded that it's really important to not get caught up in that. But also, thinking at the speed of AI is more of a, how can I unshackle myself in the way that I think about? Sometimes we use um, administrative blockers to procrastinate so that we don't have to do the difficult thing. And I see this a lot in tech teams where, somebody will come up with requirements and then pass them on to somebody else, and then somebody else is digesting it. And there's these long cycles. And that gives you time to metabolize it. It also gives you time and distance away from launching the thing, because that's the big scary thing. But now, as these cycles have condensed, there's a need to confront those emotions more openly, because we don't have those buffers anymore. You can create something now, so what's stopping you,
Mm.
right? Anybody can. So you don't have excuses to hide behind. You don't have buffers and periods of time that can give you space between you and the scary thing. And so it's about working with those emotional states to unshackle your thinking and to recalibrate it. Like, oh wait, asking yourself, like, if I want to do this thing now, what's the automatic thought in my head? Oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. No, ask yourself, how can I get this done now with what's available to me? Like, if I had all the agency in the world, like a Google search away, and you'll find 1,000 AI tools that can do most of what you want to do. And I realize I'm talking about it in the realm of software, and perhaps I'm in a bubble, so I don't want to say this is true for anyone everywhere. But that's what I'm experiencing right now in my little bubble. That's where this is impacting it.
Yeah, and I love the 2 points you bring up, like opposite ends of the spectrum. Like make sure you go in nature, take a walk, no phone, no technology, don't get wrapped up in it. And then
Yeah.
on the other hand, it's like you need to take all the action now.
Yeah.
It's very tricky middle way to be walking right now, but I think when you notice you get yourself getting caught too far into one or the other, that's usually a sign, at least for me. But I mean, I'll go take a nature walk. I'll probably do it after this. And you actually intentionally leave your phone at home.
Yeah.
You enter what feels like a new reality when you're away from this because this is so accelerated.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we're having a conversation and on a podcast right now, so it doesn't feel that way being on the computer. But when I'm creating and building, it's like all speed ahead. So it's like it's being fully with whatever is present in each moment. But I mean, I resonate with the speed aspect of it. And yeah, it feels like I can bring ideas into fruition almost instantly.
Yeah.
As long as I act.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's a tight. It does feel like it's opposing on the surface, like this feeling of surrendering to the flow and having agency. But I think that they're more connected than opposite because, how do I put this? I think to have agency, you need to be able to surrender to what is, and then you can see, okay, what are the tools available to me? What's stopping me from doing what I need to do? I think what happens when we don't surrender, when we have resistance to something, and then we make up these stories about why we can't do something, and that takes away our agency. So really coming back to what we were talking about, that state of surrender and flow is what allows us to unlock that agency, because I think it's our natural state. I don't think, people seem to have this idea that if you just surrender to things, you're just going to do nothing and just be carried by the waves of life. But I think we have a natural tendency to want to grow, to want to expand, to want to experience ourselves. I mean, isn't that what all of this is? And it's so once you're able to surrender into it, I think that's when the action starts. But you're right about the walks. I mean, despite this, I still feel like I need to program that into my life. And the moment I'm out in the sunshine and it's beautiful, I forget all about everything, and it's beautiful. And you need that because puts everything into perspective.
Yeah, and even being present with what is
Yeah.
sometimes the taxes or the homework, whatever it is that your separate self doesn't want to do. But in the grand scheme of the video game of life, that's just one of the bosses. That's one of the challenges that's kind of monotonous and boring.
Exactly.
So there's something to be said about those aspects of the video game.
Yeah.
They do serve their purpose. Maybe they're outdated, but it's what is arising now in the present reality.
Yeah.
Now I want to know something.
Mm-hmm.
You're a pretty prolific writer on Twitter. What's your process like? Do you sit down at a cafe? Do you block off time? Is it just in the flow? How does it work for you?
Well, firstly, thank you so much. And I love your writing as well, by the way. I love your newsletters. They're very inspired. My process, I love to walk, and I know we've been talking a lot about that. I like to go on, I do have my technology-free walks, but I also have lately taken my ChatGPT for a walk, and I speak to it.
I've never heard somebody say that.
Oh, I love ChatGPT. So I have such an emotional bond to it. But I just take voice notes and kind of ramble about whatever feels most alive in me at that moment. And then I'll come home and I'll just make sense of it and try to write as much as I can. And then I batch it. And sometimes I'll just write directly. It doesn't always have to be voice notes, but usually it'll come at a time when I'm doing something else, like cleaning or going for a walk. The shower, I actually tried to get this waterproof book that I could stick in the shower to write, because that's where all my best ideas come. But it just
Genius.
it wasn't genius. It actually just, the paper all disintegrated, made a mess.
No.
I wish somebody should build like markers that I can write on tile with. But anyway, it always kind of comes during times when I'm not actively thinking about something. Or when I'm listening to somebody else having a conversation with somebody else, I guess what I'm trying to say is it comes out of the blue, and then I'll just make a note of it in my phone or whatever's accessible to me, and then I'll write about it. I've never been good at um, being super disciplined about it, like sitting down and just saying, "Hey, I'm going to write now." Usually, I can do that if there's already some seeds that have been planted before, and then I'll
Hmm.
write.
Hmm. Yeah, I think too, like you're still very busy with like a tech job.
Yeah.
So it makes it harder to like sit down for hours straight. But I would love to see it at some point. Like I could see books emerging from you at some point. Have you thought about it?
Um, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, I have, but I feel like I don't. I feel like there's something more that I need to know or learn. Maybe this is a part of me that's imposter syndroming this conversation right now. But I don't know. It's like there is something else that I need to discover or learn before I can write about something. But I think there's some domains that I feel like that are more in the practical realm that I can write about from what I know about my experience working with people. Perhaps. You never know. Maybe. I
Mm.
think I will.
Yeah, I think you will too. But I do admire your humility and patience with it.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you tell us about IFS? What is IFS?
Okay, yeah. So I think the best way to understand IFS is to think of an example. So maybe think of an example right now in your life where you felt conflicted, where you felt it doesn't have to be a big conflict. It could be something as simple as I wanted to wake up for the gym, but some part of me wanted to sleep in. That's fine. And just think of that scenario and try to see, did you feel like there were different parts of you that wanted different things?
Yes.
Okay. There we go.
There's a present circumstance that is arising.
Okay. So IFS recognizes this what it calls multiplicity. And the reason why I asked you to do that at first is because it can be disorienting to think of yourself as multiple, because we like to think of ourselves as one consolidated being. But our brains don't work like that. Like as we go through life, we have these different neural networks that have evolved as adaptations to certain stimuli. So, for example, if we had an angry parent, for example, one of the reactions to that could have been to shrink away or to people please or to not say things that could spark their anger, and that becomes like a what they call a schema, or you can just call it as an adaptation to something. And then these become parts over time in our minds. And that's why we think about it as, in colloquial senses, one part of me wanted to do this and one part of me wanted to do that. And IFS is a framework or a philosophy or a set of principles that allows us to dialogue with these parts in a way that gives them the space to breathe. Because usually we're like, I don't know, usually, but many times, for example, if there's a part of us that we don't like, we're like, no, get away from me. I wish I didn't feel like this. I'm awful. I suck, or whatever. Right? Sometimes we have this resistance inside of us, and IFS helps us give space to all of these parts so that we can hear their stories with curiosity and compassion, because that's what allows them to open up to us. And in doing so, we understand why certain parts are behaving a certain way, and then we can aid them in whatever they're trying to do. If they're trying to protect us, we aid them in doing that. Or if they're operating off of an assumption or if they're operating off of a story that's no longer true for us because our circumstances have changed, we update them. So it's just this a way to interact with parts of our mind so that we are creating that internal harmony. Um, yeah, so that we can make better decisions, so we're not fighting ourselves, so that we're able to be with all parts of ourselves and just create more of that internal loving state that then
Mm.
reflects into our outer states as well.
Mm. Yeah, I think it could be helpful to actually go into like a grounded example
Mm-hmm,
of how one may do this. And so when you asked me to imagine a conflict,
mm-hmm,
what I imagine is today there's an inner conflict of I can, on one hand, clean my apartment, finish my taxes, finish all my schoolwork, and
mm-hmm,
then really hit tomorrow with a fresh start to put all my energy into my creative projects.
mm-hmm.
That feels exciting. it feels exciting in the morning. It doesn't feel exciting now.
Yeah.
There's another part of me that's just like, oh, maybe I would just like chill out, read a book, and go to sleep early. But I can almost sense that that is the lower part of me. So I
Hmm.
mean, do you see it as a higher self, a lower self dialogue?
Hmm.
Is it there's a part of me, my inner child, who had things done for me, and so I'm lazy. There's a part of me that's lazy,
Hmm.
and that's something to be talked to from the perspective of the self who wants to be responsible.
Hmm.
I don't know. How would you navigate that?
Yeah, I love that you brought up that example actually, because I mean it's something that it's so relatable to most of us. Um, so I think one of the fundamental principles in IFS is that we don't consider any part of us as lower than or higher than. There's a self, and then there's parts, and self is that witness, that play, that space, that presence, that unconditional love, compassion. But all parts of us are trying to serve us in some way. Maybe they don't know the best way, but they're all trying to do something for us. And so, what we want to do when approaching our parts. So, for example, if you were to talk to the part of you that's like, I kind of don't want to do this right now. I'm feeling tired or lazy or whatever. You could try to put away that judgment of, oh, this is my lower self. Because when you are talking to this part and if you are judging it, in IFS they call that blending. Like you're blending with the part of you that's judging this part. So you would step back out of this feeling of judgment, feeling of this is lazy, and try to be in that capital S self. So the way you do that is like, okay, let me just be curious about why is this part here? Why is it preventing me from doing what I want to do right now? Just curiosity. So maybe try and see if you can find any curiosity in yourself right now.
So you're saying to look with curiosity at that part of myself that wants to be lazy, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
I think I'll depersonalize it.
Hmm.
He just wants to be able to rest.
Yeah, yeah. So you can go deeper on that, but that's a very necessary part. I mean, that's a very crucial part. There's nothing lazy about that. He's helping you survive, helping you thrive because you need to take care of yourself. You need to recover your energy. And so, I mean, uh, in a longer, if we were to work with this much longer, we might ask it questions like, well, how long have you been doing this job? I mean, are you this sometimes these parts of us that are begging us to rest are really exhausted from holding on to this for so long. And you might ask it, where did you come from? What memories are associated? This is a simpler example, but you could go back and then you would talk to the other part of you, which is the part that's like, no, you got to get this things done. And then you'll be curious about that. And I don't know how much of that you want to do in this space, or if you want to do that offline, I'm happy as well. But
Yeah, I think you gave me some great jumping off points.
okay.
And I think you gave somebody that's listening a great jumping off point too, to explore without judgment, because originally I just positioned that part of me that wants to get everything done as the higher self and the part of me that wants to rest as the lower self.
Yeah.
When I started to look at both of those without judgment, I realized that's not necessarily true at all. And
Yeah.
actually, in some aspect, it could be the higher self that wants to rest.
Yeah.
And so I think it would take more exploration to like really see and get to the bottom. But I think you gave me a great jumping off point and the listener a great jumping off point too.
Okay, great. Yeah. Oh, question you can ask yourself before you begin exploring is, how do I feel towards this part? And if you feel anything that's not, if you feel like I'm angry towards this part, or I'm feeling afraid of this part, or I'm irritated, that's a sign you're not in self. And if you're not in self, it's like, think about it as human relationships, right? Like, let's say you've you've had a fight with a friend, and you go there and you're all angry and you're not willing to hear what they have to say, you're not going to get very good responses from them, right? They're going to be on the defensive. They're especially if it's like years of fighting, right? Which is sometimes the case with our parts. It's just going to be like, well, you never listened to me anyway. I'm not going to, tell you anything about it because you're just coming to me with the weapons out. And so it's similar internally. So asking that question before you even start and checking in with the feeling somatically as well. Like, are you feeling open? Are you feeling tension in your body? Like, we didn't do the whole thing just now, but checking in with how you feel is also a part of the process. So when you're feeling, you could tell yourself intellectually that I'm curious, but you can feel all, wound up. And so you have to check in as well. Are you actually feeling curious and open?
Yeah, I feel like really grounding yourself into the present moment and just like letting yourself soften is a really good way to tap into this. And I've noticed I've been trying to channel writing a little bit, and I notice I can't become a clear channel for some higher consciousness to channel through me if my body is in a state of tension.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same way, you can't do the inner work with the body in a state of tension. Well, I guess that is the inner work, right? You can't do IFS or active imagination or any of these practices when you're tense and you're resisting reality. You almost have to get to a place of neutrality within yourself and just be sitting in that seat of observer. And then you can have the dialogue. Then the channel can come through.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. And at the same time, I'd say that if there is a bit of tension, to be kind to that as well, to recognize that there is a part that's protecting us in that moment, and see at that point, can I be curious about it? I think, again, it does require that stepping back, but in all moments, if we can just be with what is, even when we are feeling, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. Even a little bit of it is good enough to start.
That's great. So if somebody wanted to do a whole session with you, how could they do that, and what would it be like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they can just contact me. I can share. I'm Sue_dreams on Twitter, so they can reach out to me there, or share website and everything after. What would it be like? Well, I'm not a therapist, so I should say that up front. It would be an exploration with IFS as one of the modalities that I work with, somatic work being others. And yeah, I mean, I don't really have a template or a cookie cutter sort of approach. It will be what's present. And sometimes it's more strategic, more in the realm of the real world. Sometimes we go deep into different stories that we hold in our subconscious mind and unravel all of it. It really depends on, it's like choose your own adventure. It really depends on who's present and what we need to work through.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And even just from the little 5-minute thing, I have some more clarity.
Oh, yeah?
I'm gonna go try it after this.
Okay.
Most definitely. Yeah.
I'd love to hear how that goes.
I'll definitely let you know. And last thing before we hop off, where can people connect with you? I know you mentioned X. Is there anywhere else?
I'm not on any other social media right now, or at least not active. But I do have my website. It's called myinneroasis.com. And so there's a place where they can contact me. Otherwise, Twitter.
Cool. I'll make sure I link that below.
Yeah, thank you.
Guys, definitely check out Sue's stuff. Also, subscribe to her newsletter. I just subscribed today. She's an incredible writer, and I think we'll have a lot of insights for you. So thank you very much for coming on. This was fun. It was a long time brewing, and I sense that it might be the first of a few future conversations. Who knows where we're going to be in a year from now? Like, really, it can go quite exponential quite fast.
Oh, yeah.
In this reality.
Oh, yeah. I'm excited for that. And thank you so much, Jack. I enjoyed this so much. Always love to talk to you, but it was lovely to do it synchronously. So thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.